Hello, everyone, and you're very, very welcome to this webinar in relation to the report of the Independent Commission on the College of the Future as it pertains to Northern Ireland. Today's a very important day for colleges in Northern Ireland as the Independent Commission on the College of the Future launches its report on how to take forward its vision. And it's worth explaining this is a Four Nations report that has been compiled by a commission over the past 2 years. There's a UK-wide report and set of recommendations that was published last autumn. But given the diversity across the UK in terms of this issue and the skills agenda, there are also 4 separate nation reports. So this is the final one of those being launched, and obviously the best one in relation to Northern Ireland. And that shows that approach reflects both the commonality of approach and some of the issues being faced across the UK, but also the diversity that we have, particularly around devolution and how different progress can be made in the different regions. By way of introduction, I'm Stephen Farry, currently the MP for North Down, but I think I was largely appointed to the Commission given my role previously as Minister for Employment and Learning between 2011 and 2016. So I'm 5 years out of a formal role in the system, so apologies if I'm a little rusty in any respect. Just in terms of housekeeping, all attendees have the cameras turned off and mics muted throughout the session. If anyone has any questions, we will have a question and answer session at the end. They can ask that via the chat function. And the webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Commission's website in the coming days. I want to thank all of our partners, which have been instrumental throughout this important piece of work, including the Association of Colleges, City and Guilds, Colleges Scotland, Coleg Cymru, FETL, GISC, NOCN, NCFE, and Pearson. So as you can see, it's been a huge collaborative effort in that respect. The Commission started out by seeking to answer the questions on what we need and what we want to see from colleges in 2030 and how we get there. And this report's publication is timely. Businesses are facing significant challenges, and the redundancies are expected to be high after the period of furlough ends. At the same time, we are facing big trends in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, climate change, and an ageing population. Of course, this exercise was commenced prior to the COVID pandemic. But if anything, the implications of COVID and the rebuilding of our society, I think ever more reinforce the recommendations and the work of the Commission. So again, it's a very timely report in that respect. And retraining and equipping people at all stages of their careers was always an important issue, but it's now going to be even more vital to ensure that we have the right skills as we move into a new phase of the economy, and in particular as to how we address the needs of a zero carbon economy. The Commission has worked hard to build a consensus around a vision of the College of the Future in 2030, with those from across the college sector, businesses, universities, academia, trade unions, student voice, and beyond, and being involved in a whole range of conversations. The vision is for people, productivity, and place. The College of the Future will empower people throughout their lives with the skills they need to get on in life, support better productivity and innovation of businesses, and strengthen every community's sense of place. In October, the Commission set out its recommendations for achieving this across the UK with broad principles. So today's report recognises the unique journey that colleges in Northern Ireland have been on, and how much the Commission has learned from the policy and good practice in this sector. And it is worth stressing at this point that the different regions of the UK were all starting from different bases, and in many respects, Northern Ireland did have a pre-existing strong foundation to build on, and we were ahead of many other parts of the UK, particularly in terms of engagement with businesses and that sense of community. And that was very much recognised by a lot of the partner organisations. And this comes obviously at an exciting time in the sense that we are expecting a fresh skills strategy to be published shortly by the Department for the Economy. I know that the Minister is very much engaged with that and places a huge emphasis on skills as part of the economic transformation in Northern Ireland, and rightly colleges are central to the realisation of that vision. So at this stage, I want to pass on and just to our speakers, but first of all, just to introduce who we're being joined with. I'm delighted to be joined, first of all, by my fellow Commissioner, Professor Ellen Hazelkorn, who's done extensive work in a number of education systems across the world. She will share an overview of the key recommendations from the Commission. Unfortunately, Mary-Therese McGivern, who was due to be presenting, is unfortunately a little unwell, so Ellen has very kindly agreed to step in at short notice. Then we're going to be joined by Stephen Evans, who's the expert panel member, Chief Executive of Learning and Work Institute. And he will share insights from their work in the Northern Ireland Skills System. Jackie Henry, MBE, is Deloitte's UK Consulting People and Purpose Lead and the Northern Ireland Senior Partner, and also Chair of the Skills Strategy Advisory Group. And she will be sharing her perspective as a leader in business. And finally, and of course, not least, Brian Doran, who I've worked with for over many, many years, who is the Principal and Chief Executive of Southern Regional College, who will reflect on the recommendations from the perspective of a college leader. So hopefully we have plenty of time to work through the presentations and to answer your questions and answers. So thank you all for joining us. At this stage, it's my great honour to pass the baton across to Ellen. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Stephen. And I want to wish everyone a good welcome to this launch of the Northern Ireland report. As we know, the COVID pandemic has had a devastating impact on Northern Ireland society and economy, as indeed everywhere. Reports suggest a very steep decline in economic output and a significant rise in the number of workers either temporarily laid off or having their salaries funded through the government's job retention schemes, such as being furloughed. Those who are furloughed or laid off are disproportionately weighted toward younger, lower skilled and temporary workers and are more likely to be employed in the more vulnerable sectors. These concerns come on top of key structural challenges for Northern Ireland: too few higher wage jobs, a imbalance, and productivity, all within the context of leaving the EU longer, and had the chance to increase our skills in areas where opportunities exist and to take up other opportunities such as apprenticeships. The challenge of reskilling those who have been in the labour market for many years is equally vital and will be more important in the coming decades as the demographic push moves through, and as many more people will see lifelong learning as integral to their career and lives. This is what makes this report so especially timely. This is a moment in time to commit to a new future for colleges. The recent Economic Recovery Action Plan from the Economy Minister put skills front and centre, which is good news. And as we await the Executive Skills Strategy consultation, we are saying boldly and loudly that colleges are the vehicle for economic recovery and future prosperity. At its heart, this report proclaims the importance of further strengthening and aligning the important work of colleges in Northern Ireland to wider policy agendas and, importantly, the economic strategy. The report follows the successful launch of the UK-wide report last October and reports for England, Scotland, and Wales. It also reflects thinking across many EU and OECD countries, which have recognized that as we have increased higher education participation to over 50%, 50.7% in Northern Ireland, we have regretfully paid insufficient attention to people who do not attend university. The pandemic has forced us all to realize that people we have depended upon to keep our hospitals and healthcare centers, manufacturing, and cities going are often those with vocational training. but these are also the institutions and the students with the least funding and resources compared with universities. The Commission has learned a great deal from Northern Ireland colleges about the very significant role they play in driving economic and social success. Colleges in Northern Ireland should be very proud of that. And Northern Ireland is already moving in the direction of the Commission's UK-wide recommendations. Now is the time to untap their potential even further and to ensure that colleges can play their part in assisting Northern Ireland move forward. Knowledge and skills are an essential part of the recovery plan, enabling everyone to live personally successful lives, to underpin democratic traditions, and to contribute to making Northern Ireland an attractive and prosperous place in which to live, work, and play. I want to give you an overview of the main recommendations. So first, establishing a central oversight body and skills advisory board to support the effective implementation, coordination, and oversight of a higher ambition for skills. A key aspect of this recommendation sees post-secondary or tertiary education as a single integrated educational system, providing learners of all ages and abilities with the opportunities to progress through the aid of coherent curriculum pathways, progression routes and accreditation criteria, and thus improving access for individuals into work and/or into education. Collaboration is the name of the game between colleges and universities, while working together with businesses, civil society, and local authorities. Secondly, developing a single governance structure across Northern Ireland colleges to streamline accountability and funding to maximize the contribution and impact of colleges across all aspects of the economy and society. We have varying options for what this might look like, but the key takeaway is that already a well-developed network of colleges could be even further networked and utilized to further strengthen the collective contribution of colleges as part of a coherent system. Thirdly, investing sustainably in colleges through A, redress of historical inequalities between college funding and that of schools and universities, and B, maximizing the contribution to business and community support through uncoupling funding from the headcount of individual students. This includes ensuring that comparable funding is made available to fill the investment gap left by the loss of the European Social Fund. Fourth, committing to a statutory right to lifelong learning at level 3 to ensure that everyone can access the learning they need when they need it, and developing and implementing a digital action plan with a network of community hubs to address digital exclusion. This could help an even greater number of people, many of whom are socially and economically excluded already, and to reach their potential, to get good jobs, to progress their careers, and unlock chances for further studies and training. And fifth, defining what colleges and universities deliver to avoid unnecessary competition and duplication, and to allow for the improvement of curriculum pathways, progression routes, career advice and guidance across schools, colleges, and universities. Key to this will be to confirm the distinctive and exclusive role of colleges in the delivery of higher technical and professional skills programs at level 4 and 5, including foundation degrees and higher level apprenticeships. While honors degrees, degree equivalent, and postgraduate programs will remain the responsibility of universities, it should also be recognized that colleges can play an important role in widening participation at a regional level. This report should be a starting point for a new conversation about what colleges can fully achieve in reviving a battered economy and creating an economically, socially, and culturally inclusive and successful Northern Ireland. Creating a more diverse and seamless post-secondary education system must be based on embracing both further and higher education and moving far beyond policies which promote predatory behavior and unnecessary duplication. Fundamental are the principles of shared governance, collaboration, engagement, and networking between educational institutions, enterprise, local and regional authorities, and civil society, as well as between further and higher education and schools. To best future-proof our citizens, a flexible and accessible education system is needed to offer different pathways and support systems to enable people to enhance their skills and knowledge throughout their lives and to sustain themselves through planned and unplanned changes in life circumstances. I commend this report to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ellen. That was very much appreciated. That sets the scene in terms of the report and the main recommendations pertaining to Northern Ireland. So it's my great pleasure now to hand over to Stephen.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you very much. And thanks for the invite along to speak today. At the Learning and Work Institute, we've been looking at learning skills and employment issues for this is actually our centenary year, so 100 years now, but it's always good to take a bit of a step back and look ahead to the future. And I think there's lots in this report for us to get our teeth stuck into today and beyond today. I just wanted in my sort of few minutes just to talk about three things really. So one is about the effects of the pandemic. Second is about life beyond the pandemic. And then the third is how do we draw those things together and what do we do about it? So if we start with the pandemic, and Ellen talked a bit about this earlier. So it's clear the pandemic's had quite a profound effect on jobs and skills. So in Northern Ireland, the number of people claiming unemployment related benefits has doubled since March 2020. That's in line with the UK as a whole. And there's around about 100,000 people or 100,000 employments are currently furloughed in Northern Ireland. Now that's actually a good thing because the furlough scheme is protecting jobs, but the question arises when that furlough scheme ends at the end of September, assuming we've managed to ease all the restrictions from the pandemic, are we all going to flood back to our offices and away from Zoom and head to the pubs? Probably yes on the pubs, but offices may be a bit less so. So what are those structural change? What's the long-term impacts of the virus going to be? And how does that affect our jobs and skills needs as a society? I think also I kind of reflect on the value of learning beyond the economy and to health and well-being, for example. So I know so many adult learning classes have gone online and kind of kept people engaged and built those connections through the pandemic when there was a real risk we could have all been very, very isolated. So those wider benefits of learning I think are really, really critical and have shone through during the pandemic. So we've got a job to do in terms of how we recover from the pandemic, given the rise in unemployment, and Ellen was completely correct to talk about the disproportionate impacts on young people who are facing a double whammy of the disrupted education and weaker labour market. I'd say the other end of the age spectrum as well, where you kind of may need to adjust to some of those structural changes that I was talking about, but also previous employment programmes, for example, have worked less well for older people than for younger people. So both ends of the age spectrum there. So that's the pandemic in 1.5 minutes. In terms of life beyond the pandemic, we published some research which you kindly referenced in today's report, which we did with OCNNI, which tried to look ahead to 2030 and say on current trends, where's Northern Ireland's skills profile going to be and how will that compare to other countries? And the good news is that the skills profile, the qualifications profile, I should say, is projected to improve. The proportion with low or no qualifications would fall from about 1/3 to about 1/4 of adults by 2030. So that's good. The bad news is lots of other countries are improving faster and from a higher base. So Northern Ireland is projected on those trends to be fairly significantly behind a number of other countries, particularly in terms of up to level 2 qualifications and then those level 4 plus qualifications. So the good news is that the one thing you know about any projection is it's going to be wrong because it's a projection, and the good news is we can make it wrong. We can do something about it. So part of the point we were trying to make is we need a higher ambition for learning and skills across Northern Ireland. So we can do that, and this report sets out a number of ways we can do it. And I think it does matter not just for its own sake, it matters for economic growth, which as an economist, the technical term for economic growth since 2008 is rubbish. So we can do a lot better on economic growth in Northern Ireland and for the UK. It matters for employment, where, as I say, we've had this rise in unemployment, but Northern Ireland's employment rate was lower than the rest of the UK previously. But it matters for health and wellbeing and community engagement and a whole set of other really great ways in which learning can benefit and enrich all of our lives. So lastly then, what do we do about this? I think the report has got loads of really good and interesting ideas, and it's well worth, for those of you who haven't read through it yet, to log onto the website and have a look. I guess for me, point one is we've got to set a higher ambition for learning and skills. So if Northern Ireland on current trends isn't going to catch up or exceed some of those other OECD countries, well, we need to do something about it. And I think the forthcoming skills strategy, which my fellow Stephen mentioned at the start, gives a really good opportunity to do that. That needs investment from government, individuals and employers, but we also need to think about how we invest. But the second thing I'd say, and then I'll probably pause after this in the interest of time, is just quite how many people and organisations need to be involved in that ambition. So it's probably somewhat heretical to say it's an event on the College of the Future, but this definitely isn't just about colleges, and I don't think the report says that anyway. This is about how colleges work with lots of other learning and community learning providers, with employers, with local authorities, with social housing, with lots of other things. My slightly corny line is that there's no, in public policy, there's no such thing as a silver bullet, but learning needs to be the golden thread running through lots of our public policy ambitions. Virtually anything that you can name as a public policy objective, if you want to do it, learning's got a role to play. So I think that collective ambition for delivery is really important, and how we make those connections in terms of the College of the Future too. So I could go on and on and on for ages, but you'll be delighted to know I'm not going to. So I'll pause there and hand back to you, and looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, my fellow Stephen. And it's now my great pleasure to pass over to Jackie Henry.
Thank you, Stephen, and other Stephen. I enjoyed the pandemic in 1.5 minutes. That was quite something. But I'm really delighted to be here today as well. And it has been such a privilege to pen the foreword to this report. And can I commend the Commission and everyone who has contributed to it for bringing this forward. For me, I see the challenges that business face every day, and access to the right people and people with the right skills is just amongst the biggest, the most pervasive of issues. And this report, it shows the strength of the college system that we have here, but it really shines a light on the opportunity that we have to further capitalise on the role of colleges in supporting businesses and in the economy at large. And in my role as chair of the Skills Strategy Advisory Group, I've had recent conversations with Minister for the Economy, and just yesterday, Minister for Finance. And it's clear to me that right now skills is high on the political agenda and is a priority for our recovery, and rightly so. And so contributing to the success of business, creating possibilities and opportunities that weren't there when I was growing up back in the 70s and 80s is an absolute personal passion of mine. And that's why in the Skills Strategy Advisory Group, we are very focused, and I am very focused in the key pillars of addressing skills imbalances, driving economic growth, creating that culture for lifelong learning, and enhancing digital skills to develop our regional spine. I'm really, really pleased to see these measures coming through in the Commission's report, and the way forward to address these systemically. The report's recommendations, they are wide-ranging, but the proposals that are set out here, they warrant serious consideration, but importantly, action. What I'm particularly exercised by is the call for funding measures that will empower colleges to maximise capacity for business support and innovation. and kickstarting the economy, kickstarting economic recovery to build more competitive, inclusive, greener economy, absolutely has to have colleges at the heart, and as such a vehicle for the brighter future that we all hope for and wish for. So I really do hope that this ambitious report provides the college sector with the vision and the authority to own the room in conversations about the future, and as well gives a platform within which they can lift this into local communities and with businesses and with the executive, and really execute on the vision and drive forward those tangible actions to unleash the power of colleges that we can see. So thank you very much. Back over to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And just a reminder, everyone, before we come to Brian, please feel free to type any questions you have into the chat function. And now, finally, it's my huge pleasure to introduce Brian Doran from SRC.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's been an absolute privilege to be part of the Four Nations Alliance that commissioned the work of the FE Commission itself. During that time, I had the great pleasure of meeting with other leaders across the FE sector in the UK, as well as senior government officials. And what struck me during that time was there are clear policy differences right across the Four Nations. There's much that ties us together in further education across the UK. And that is very much driven in our role for supporting economic recovery, and the fact that colleges are very much embedded at the heart of our communities. I'm pleased that the Commission has recognised that much has already been referred to has been achieved here in Northern Ireland. We're not starting from a zero base, and the journey that the colleges have been on over the last 10 years very much stems from the further education strategy, and we've delivered a lot in that time. But also with the imminent launch of the Northern Ireland Skills Strategy that has already been referred to, and the Economic Recovery Plan, I welcome again the Commission's prioritisation of skills, and very much the assertion that the colleges should be front and centre in the drive to address the skills imbalances. I also welcome the call for a statutory right to lifelong learning and an equalisation of funding. That is absolutely critical to the development of the workforce of the future, as we've already heard. And let's not also forget the importance of lifelong learning in improving life chances and the contribution that it makes to health and well-being of citizens right across Northern Ireland. The work that we're doing in providing knowledge transfer and innovation that Jackie referred to, and support for local businesses, has been recognised, and that's through funding initiatives from the Economy Department, through the establishment of curriculum hubs and other initiatives. And notwithstanding the strengths that have been clearly recognised of the current system, we should not underestimate the need to grow that, to support business, particularly the small and medium enterprise business startups. And I believe that there is certainly a need for us to maximise the potential of our colleges going forward. But of course, as already been referred to, that will very much depend on the levels of funding that follows. I also welcomed the fact that the Commission highlighted the positioning of colleges, the role of colleges in the wider educational ecosystem, and in particular between the role of schools and the roles of universities. And the Commission rightly recognises the division of responsibilities for education across the Department of Education and the Economy Department, and that has led to fragmentation and has also acted as barriers for effective and coherent 14 to 19 offering that improves learner and curriculum pathways, and also contributes currently to duplication of provision between the educational providers. And I echo the Commission's call for both departments to prioritise the work around transition of young people into careers. The Commission also calls for the creation of an integrated tertiary system, a key call, because it's about establishing that distinctive and exclusive role for colleges in supporting higher technical and professional skills. This call for increased flexibility, I certainly welcome. The relaxation, if you like, in terms of some of the restrictions that colleges are operating under. We want to be able to broaden our reach to engage with UK universities and also universities in the Republic of Ireland. And I think that is critical to addressing those higher skill needs for the future. But of course, the report also points us towards other recommendations that some in the sector might potentially deem to be contentious. As has already been referred to by Ellen, the recommendation to progress a single coherent college structure is certainly one that will generate a great deal of debate within the sector itself. But it shouldn't be forgotten that the Commission has made this recommendation having recognised the close working relationship between the colleges and the Economy Department that already exists since we were classified as non-departmental public bodies. The increased levels of collaboration, closer alignment of policy and delivery across the region, and increased opportunities, dare I say it, for shared services. So the Commission's recommendation to introduce a new single model of governance and oversight is certainly worth further discussion. Finally, the Commission's vision for the College of the future in relation to people, productivity and place is a clear reaffirmation of the role of FE in Northern Ireland. There is much to be celebrated in the FE system, but the Commission also points us to areas where we can further capitalise and build on that success. Equally, colleges shouldn't shy away from the thought-provoking recommendations that the report sets out. And I believe that it is now time for colleges in Northern Ireland. This is our time to own this debate and to push this forward. And I sincerely hope that this report today will help shine the light on the importance of FE and the need for sustainable funding to meet future skills needs, delivering economic recovery and supporting lifelong learning for all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. So we're going to turn now to questions. We have a few questions coming in on the chat already. Please keep feeding those through. I'm going to just start with two that came in writing in advance of today. The first one is from Scott Alexander, also from SRC, from the governing body, just looking at the issue around the impact of the pandemic and the lockdown on the sector. And he's asking, does the proposals include any ideas and suggestions on readiness for another pandemic or lockdown or any other type of major disruption, on how to provide in particular a centralised library of lectures for home-based students, for example? So any thoughts on that?
Stephen, if I could start, and I'll pick that difficult question up with Scott later, but it's a very interesting question. In the context of the Commission's report, it's not directly addressed, but I think we all recognise that over the last year, from a delivery point of view, from college, we have transitioned significantly to the delivery of online remote learning. And I want to pay credit to all of the staff, lecturing staff, support staff, and how we've actually adjusted. The innovation that has been progressed in that year has been absolutely tremendous. And that places colleges, I think, in a very, very strong position to look again at our future delivery models. In relation to Scott's question about, the sharing of resources, etc., it is a challenge. Collaboration across 6 entities here in Northern Ireland's colleges, it is difficult, and that's about effective leadership from myself and my colleagues at principal level. And there is significant collaboration taking place presently and will continue to be. But he's posed certainly a very, very strong point that we should be using the opportunity of the pandemic to actually build on that success.
That's great. Does anyone else want to come in on that one at all?
Can I maybe just add something? Because we did. Sure. We've been running an annual survey of adults for the last 26 years, asking them if they take part in learning, and if so, why, and if not, why not, and all that sort of stuff. So there's loads of data on our website you can play around with if you're a bit of a data geek like me. But the one we did just after the first set of lockdowns a year ago, who'd have thought we'd been talking about lockdown 1? That really showed an explosion in interest in digital and online learning. So we kind of had loads of people doing all kinds of different forms of learning. And this isn't just kind of formal courses, if you like. This is also lots of informal things like learning what Zoom is, and every now and again remembering to take yourself off mute. And I've not quite learned that one myself fully yet. But there was loads of kind of engagement in online learning, loads of interest. And I know loads of colleges and community learning providers and others took loads of their provision online. Now, for me, lots of learners that I speak to or we speak to or I hear from say, well, we kind of really would like to go back face to face as well. But I do think there will be a bit of a structural shift in that online learning and blended learning as well. And really the pandemic has almost pressed the fast forward button on some of those trends. And it kind of the biggest reason adults, the last point, biggest reason adults give for not learning in our survey, beyond understanding why it would matter, is also how they would fit it around work and home life. And the digital learning and the blended learning is a brilliant way to do some of that. So I hope we can harness that interest for the future and press that fast forward button.
Yes, thanks, Stephen. If I just slightly jump ahead in terms of order these questions are coming in. We've also a question in from Jason Miles Campbell around how the colleges can be best supported to lead further on the use of digital and supporting learners and the economy. So that sort of builds on what you're saying there, Stephen, to an extent. If there's anything you want to add in particular in response to that particular question.
I think there's a kind of I did remember to take myself off mute there. There you go. That's lifelong learning. I think there's a kind of real collaboration point, isn't there? Here, I know that kind of runs through the report as a whole, but given that that sort of digital technology almost reduces borders and it gets rid of that travel time. So I think there is a collaboration point here, so we don't end up with loads of duplication. There's probably a connectivity point as well, because we know there's a digital divide, and it's not just about digital skills, it's also about broadband access and things like that. And again, that's my point about this isn't just about colleges, this is about how do all these things link together and how can we roll out, you know, effective and affordable broadband that then allows people who are least likely to take part in learning today to do so in future.
Great, thanks. Next up then, we have a question about from Kathleen O'Hare, that surely the current competition team post-primary and FE inhibits young people from having proper pathways and for more people achieving level 3 qualifications, how funding can better assist in that regard. And also we have a question later on around the potential for a 14 to 19 strategy. So I think that one looks like one for Jackie to begin with, I think.
Yeah, no, really happy to pick that up, and thanks for the questions. I think there are a few linked there. So it is a massive issue, and it's one that we have looked at recently in the Skills Strategy Advisory Group, and we've just completed a short, sharp task and finish paper, because we wanted really to intercept the thinking into both Department for the Economy and DE and make sure we had the views, the broad views of the group reflected in that. It is a massive issue. There is much to be done in terms of, I guess, getting, you know, the cultural shift that we need, but as well then the system shift and funding. And there's so many other points linked to that, which I think the thread of questions are touching on to really unlock this one. But it's a massively important issue, and we've just put our points through. We will continue in the Skills Advisory Group to be loud on this, and to work certainly to get some changes in place and to make sure that we intercept the review and try and get some further collaborative working on this between DFE and Department of Education.
That's great. Thank you, Jackie. Is there anyone else want to come in on that one? It's a fairly core question.
Yeah, Stephen, this is a very complex piece, as you well know, as ex-minister. And you know, we have some unique challenges here in Northern Ireland because of our post-primary school system. It is quite complex. It's so wide-ranging, dare I say it, and we'll not go into that today. But I think the fundamental principle for me is that policy and funding drives behaviour, and that has led to, dare I say it, increased levels of duplication of provision between schools, particularly sixth form and what's happening in the further education colleges. We can ill afford that in the current climate in Northern Ireland, and something has to change here, as Jackie rightly identifies. But I would make this point, and that is we should be focusing on what is right for the individual student and not what is right for institutions. That's a fundamental principle that should be driving 14 to 19 policy. And I hope through the work of the joint department work on the transition to careers that we will see that emerging.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Just going back to the written questions, we have one in from Paddy Mackle from UCU regional office in Belfast, just asking around the level of engagement that there has been with UCU and trade unions. This stage, we're going to bring in Lewis Cooper, who is the director of the Independent Commission project. Lewis is on the call as well, so I'm going to hand over to Lewis just to run through that particular angle.
Well, it's a really important question. As you said at the top, Stephen, throughout our work over the past 2 years, a massive preoccupation of ours has been precisely how to build a kind of common sense of where we want to be in 10 years' time. What is the strategy? What are we trying to achieve? And how do we build that collective ambition that you've all discussed there? So we've done lots of engagement, obviously, kind of on a practical point. Paul Novak, Deputy General Secretary of TUC, has been one of our commissioners, and we've had engagement with trade union colleagues throughout the 2 years at a number of TUC coordinated events. So we've been doing that throughout and had a lot of written inputs to our public consultation, which took place in the autumn of 2019. And lots of written contributions to other kind of informal consultations that we've advertised throughout the work. But I suppose the point that I'd be really keen to get from today's conversation, and I've seen a comment in the comments in the chat that speaks to that as well, is how do we take this forward? What is, if we feel that broadly the world we're trying to achieve is this kind of trajectory, where colleges are able to play their role for people, productivity and place, how do we come together? And what does that look like? Because I suppose without my response to that question is we'll achieve it if we all do take collective ownership of the agenda and look at working together on it. So I suppose how do we make sure today is a platform for further engagement and further conversations, and obviously in the context of all of the new skills strategy and the difficult budgetary context that we'll be entering into.
Great. Thanks very much, Lewis. I'm now just going to ask a question from Mark Huddleston, who's a former skills advisor for Northern Ireland, asking around the problems that come from short-term funding and one-year budgets, and if the recommendations had to be prioritised, how would we go about doing that? What the panel see has been the key recommendations. We have a further question along those lines as well, again from Scott Alexander, and maybe group that together with a question around in terms of who actually takes forward the recommendations as well. So that may well be a fairly three-pronged question for each of the three experts that are with us. So who wants to go first on that one? Jackie?
Thank you, Mark Huddleston, and thank you for inviting me to go first. In terms of prioritisation, I think we've talked about, and Brian, you brought that out in the last one. I mean, there are I guess clusters of recommendation. They are intrinsically linked, but for me, I think unlocking the funding alongside achieving more collaboration and more flex in the system would be key. So for me, I would be bunching the prioritisation, if I can take that set or that part of your question, Mark. For me, that would be the key. I do think, though, having said that, the 14 to 19 review and that issue is just a massively important issue. And whilst that is, it's one of those turning the tanker ones, isn't it? But we got to get stuck in, and this is the opportunity now to do that and continue to agitate and make change there. So I guess I would be prioritising those cluster of issues. I'll throw over the fence now to I guess the other parts of Mark's question, someone else.
Stephen, if I could add to what Jackie's saying, looking at where we are currently in a pandemic, and I look to the recommendations, the issue of lifelong learning, the need for enhanced support to businesses, our SME sector that is the backbone of our economy after all. The colleges, as I said earlier, can be doing a lot more, and I think if we are to, in effect, grow our economy, it has to be through that business support, the productivity, innovation and business growth that's where our focus should be on, both short term and longer term. And as Jackie says, that has to come through enhanced funding. I'm glad to see in the recovery plan from the Economic Committee that there is that focus through the flexible skills funding, the introduction of public sector apprenticeships, all age apprenticeships. You know, there's a significant element within the recovery plan that you know, resonates with me and aligns to the recommendations here. The one that I would also, of course I would promote, is again that we need some innovative thinking around support for lifelong learning. And again, the Commission's recommendation on that statutory requirement is something that I've no doubt that will again generate some further debate within the Economy Department and further afield.
And Stephen?
Yeah, I think the point about longer term sustainable funding is really important, because it kind of I think skills policy in general, probably across all 4 countries of the UK, has kind of been beset by initiative after initiative and an array of acronyms, and we're kind of we're almost completed the possible set of acronyms, and we're starting again a little bit sometimes. So I do think that's really important, but how do you get that from a Treasury or Finance department? I think it's the point about outcomes, which actually just pops up in the chat as I said that as well, and the recommendation around outcome agreements. You know, what are we seeking to achieve here? And once we kind of articulate that and start focusing a bit on that, then you can start to have that conversation about funding, I think, rather than sort of initiatives or things that come to an end, or being good on strategy, but the strategy doesn't always last quite that long. So I think that's really important. I guess the other thing I'd perhaps say in terms of one of the other questions that you were kind of raising there is there are a set of things that rely on, you know, kind of government action. They rely on either the skills strategy or action by the executive or whatever it happens to be. There's other things that we can kind of crack on with, I think. So there's what can, as Lewis was I think saying, it's kind of what can we take ownership and just get on with without needing a skills strategy or extra funding, public funding or whatever it happens to be. So for example, you know, what about employers? You know, how are we going to work with employers? How do we get employers to invest more? Because employers across the UK invest less in training than many EU countries, and that's fallen as well since the financial crisis. So I think there's a kind of longer term funding we definitely need. I feel like our outcome agreements are really critical to that. I think the empowerment of the individual would be one of my priority recommendations, and the lifelong learning entitlement's a way to do that. Otherwise you kind of just shifting around initiatives hither and thither is the risk. And then I think there's a kind of what can we just get on with and do without necessarily needing that sort of political action as well.
Right. Thank you very much, Stephen. There's 3 more questions which I'm going to try to group together. I think they make a fairly neat fit, and they've all come through in the right order. So this has been very structured. I have to commend you all for this one. So first of all, Sarah Laverty from NUS USI is talking about whether it's time to review the skills and education portfolio being split across the 2 different departments. I just have to stress I feel the pain in that one, given I was almost abolished back in 2012. But any thoughts on that will be much appreciated. Second point then is from Louise Homer around what is the problem that a single college structure is trying to solve? What is the government or market fear? What is the particular feature there that needs to be addressed? And the final point in this group of 3 is about strengthening the college brand in Northern Ireland, and that's from Leo Murphy, who of course is the one and only principal of the Northwest Regional College.
Stephen, if I could perhaps take Leo's latter point, you know, before turning to those. I mean, one of the challenges, one of the problems of further education, and this comment applies right across the UK, our FE sector, our FE colleges are complex. We are dealing and addressing needs right across the piece. If you look at that from our community engagement, lower level provision, apprenticeship training, right through to degree type programs and adult returners, adult learning programs, what we're grappling with is wide ranging. And very often that we struggle as a sector to actually communicate simply what we're about as a college. Now that part and parcel is what today's Commission's report is about. But equally, and I think what Leo's alluding to is the fact that we are, as a sector, the 6 colleges currently working on joint communications strategy here to actually look at how we are communicating our offer for full-time further education for our higher education. So we're picking up elements already from what's set out in the Commission and progressing that piece of work as 6 colleges. So watch this space, hopefully over the coming months and into the new year, new academic year, of what we're doing to collaboratively as 6 colleges in that regard. In the context of I think the question was asked, well, what's wrong with the current system? What were the benefits, if I picked you up right there, Stephen, around a single college governance structure, etc. I think, let's not underestimate, collaborations, I said earlier, is extensive, but you look at a single coherent FE system with annual turnover of 150 million or whatever it is, etc. We're on a par with universities at a local level. Now, it's not that we're competing with universities, but it provides opportunities in terms of setting clear strategic direction at a regional level, amongst other things. I also see enormous benefits in that, in providing more effective and even better quality provision in terms of learning. Stephen mentioned earlier on about the benefits around remote learning. Think about what we could do under that single governance structure in terms of having a much more coherent remote provision, online provision that stretches right across Northern Ireland, and we're not actually operating within our own geographical regions, if you follow me. Just some thoughts.
Thank you, Brian.
And I totally agree, Brian. Just, I think those 2 points are linked. The brand point, actually, Leo's point on brand, through to the structure. It's all about, I think, unlocking the power of colleges and having a very clear and strong brand voice, and then that, I think, unlocking that, I think, will be much more straightforward, perhaps, with some, with the structural changes, and that then, I guess, driving on an outcome basis and having, that real easy sharing of resource, the agility that, and you have lots of good examples of that, of what's happened in the last year, but being able to do that as a very easy matter of course, I think would be a huge plus, but absolutely linked to those big outcomes that you all aspire to. And then to the first point, I think it came in that order, it's the same point really in terms of looking at our government, the brigade of functions into education and economy and beyond. And I think, Damien, you've asked about DFC as well, but all parts of the system, the public sector system, really have a role here, and some obviously much more obviously and clearly than others, and we've already touched on 14 to 19 and unlocking some changes there. It is complex. It's more complex at times than any of us would want or like. And Stephen, as you say, you've lived that for several years. For now, it is though what we need to do and navigate around, and we can continue to try and simplify and get better ways of working. And certainly that's something in the Skills Advisory Group we've been trying to do, to make sure that we're getting sort of that broad reach in and out of various departments. And Damien, to your point, I'll lift that now on DFC. Actually, Mark and I had caught up yesterday, so we're trying to catch up and get a direct catch up with Deirdre Hargey and get in to see her soon. Just exactly on the point you make, DFC has such an important role as well in representing communities and also in the funding that goes through. So big issues there. But do you know what? There's other good models again on the chat. I can see we're talking about connections into what's happening in south of Ireland. And the model there, some brilliant learning there that we've looked at in terms of how they've structured and simplified and set things up, which appears early days to be working well. Scotland as well. So, nothing is insurmountable. And I guess, I think biting it off. I think this report also presents, you know, a portfolio of recommendations, but I think somebody said, you know, let's get going, continue. You know, you're already, the colleges are already showing that you're working on these. It shows how far on we are compared to some of the other nations as well. So just keep moving, and then I guess across the groups that we have and the interest and working with business and across communities, then we can continue to make some of these changes.
Good. Stephen.
Yeah, just add two really quick things. So first of all, on the college structure point, I think it's absolutely the right question to ask is, you know, what problem are we trying to solve? And I think it's, you know, there's a kind of set of risks with the current system that actually you end up with fragmentation and complication, and you kind of lose that benefits of collaboration. On the flip side, if you just end up with a monolithic structure, which I know what isn't what's proposed, is actually, well, where's the diversity, where's the new ideas, where's the choice, and the test for any set of changes proposed has to be in what way is this going to make things better for people. So I think that's why, and Brian talked about some of that, but that has to be the test of all of these things, I think. And that's kind of where the risk of banging on about outcome agreements, that I think that's where some of the outcome points come in as well. What are we actually trying to achieve? And then just lastly, on the sort of structures and divisions of responsibilities and things like that, I kind of leave the sort of detail of that to those who are better qualified to comment on it. It's Stephen, I know you kind of said you've been through some of that yourself. I guess I just reflect a little bit on England. I know we're in an event about Northern Ireland, but just reflect on the experience in England, where there was a department for employment and skills, so they were all in the same department, but it just meant that that they argued in the same building rather than having to travel to a different building, the employment and the skills people. And then there was an innovation, universities and skills, then universities went off somewhere else, and then skills followed a few years later, and the kind of things moved around. The question is, does any of that movement lead to any actual change that's beneficial to people? And I think the experience in England of those changes, the answer is no, because we were still asking different questions, and they were still coming from different places, and we hadn't got a common set of outcomes that we were trying to achieve, and we ended up with just a set of separate initiatives from the same department, or from two departments, or from three departments. So I think step one is, what are we trying to achieve? Step two is, what's the best way to achieve that? And then the division of responsibilities, or how we set things up, whether it's in a government, or whether it's in departments, or whether it's in college structures, that follows at the end.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephen. And this is now the final round, just picking up the remaining questions that I don't think we have touched upon so far. Just before we go there, just one reflection of my own. Whenever we talk about revised college structures, I think it's worth stressing that this is not an agenda for centralisation whatsoever. The whole tenor of the report is around the importance of place, and how colleges are absolutely fundamental in that regard, and particularly in a society like Northern Ireland, that local engagement is critically important, and it's something where, if I dare say, the colleges have a particular advantage over the universities in dealing with the local employers and really setting the agenda locally and responding to very different sub-regional economic needs we have in different parts of the region. The final 2 points, just I think that's very brief. One is we briefly touched about, which is the issue about all-island collaboration, and is there more we can do in that particular respect. And then we have a question from Megan Fearon from Open University around just a bit more detail around the flexible lifelong learning commitment, and the need just to acknowledge things like micro credentials, how we change credits, and keep people can accumulate credits across different courses, and things like all age apprenticeships. So if anyone wants to come in any of those, just as we close.
Shall I have a go just very quickly? Yeah. So on the collaboration point, I completely agree with that, and we set up. We thought we looked at the skills system and thought the one thing we need is another acronym. So we create something called NALAB, which is the Network for Adult Learning Across Borders, and that was with colleagues in the Republic of Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. And the idea is to try and share some of those experiences, because actually we're facing a lot of common challenges, and actually we've got a lot of common experiences. And I think actually the work of this commission, working across the 4 nations of the UK, kind of shows the value of that. But I think that adding the Republic of Ireland into that mix is a really sensible and important and valuable thing to do. And then on this lifelong entitlement point, so yes, we all learn in different ways, and this sector is really complex because of the range of ways we learn, different ages, different levels, different reasons for learning. So I agree with that point, absolutely. One challenge I think we've got is how do we work together to communicate that entitlement effectively to people, because most people who don't work in this field have no idea what all these levels mean, and wouldn't have no idea what a micro-credential is. So how do we communicate it in an effective way, and also make it simple, so there's not a set of what I describe as riddle me this eligibility criteria to work out if you can get on a course or get entitlement to funding or something. So I think it's a bit, maybe we can't make it simple because it's complex, but I think there is something about how we set up that entitlement so that it's easy to communicate and people understand what it means.
Stephen, if I could pick up on Catherine's question in relation to, you know, the cross-border element linkage with the FE sector down south. Again, I make the point that our economy just doesn't stop at the border. You know, I'm sitting here in Newry, 14 miles from the border. Our economies are inextricably linked. You know that better than I. And I think it is incumbent upon us to actually look at how we can better look at that system of further education, and indeed with the Institute of Technologies. The colleges in the north, you know, the Northwest Regional College, Southwest, ourselves, we are linking with the institutes, and indeed as part of the Northeast Alliance of Further and Higher Education with Dunboyne College. You know, there is engagement, but I think we need to be building on it. I think there's opportunities coming down the line. I look at Peace Plus, I look at the Shared Island Fund, and I really do look forward to building on that partnership on a cross-border basis and looking at the whole skills agenda, dare I say it, inextricably linked across economies here from the Republic through to the north. So opportunity awaits us.
Great. And Jackie, any final thoughts too?
No, I'm all good. I like Brian's opportunity awaits us, so I think that's a real positive note on which to finish on.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. Well, in conclusion, can I just do 3 rounds of thanks? I mean, first of all, I want to thank all of you for attending this launch today. In particular, I have one crucial ask of everyone. This is not a report that's been written to sit on a shelf and to be looked back through posterity. This is about a living, breathing document. It's about constant challenge for us to do better in Northern Ireland and across the UK. So of course, subject to agreeing with the document, please do all you can individually to try to promote and circulate the document, the recommendations, and try to drive this forward over the coming months. And hopefully we will see a skills strategy in the very near future with which we can engage ever more. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today and sharing your thoughts with us. It's all been very illuminating, and for sure that the debate and engagement will continue well into the future. And finally, I want to pass on my thanks to Lewis, Philippa, and Harriet from AOC, not just for the logistics around today, but indeed for all the work they've done over the past couple of years to drive the Commission forward and to make the final report a reality. So thanks to one and all, and good afternoon.